Hey everybody, this is Joe. I'm here in Houston. It is early January, and I'm going to give you a tour of both the front and the back garden, so it's going to be a little long. I'm doing them both now because it's supposed to have our first freeze tomorrow. And so before everything gets knocked down a little bit, I wanted to show you the things that are still blooming here first week of January. This is senna. This is a butterfly host plant. That's why I've got it growing, even though it's bright yellow, but it's so beautiful. And it gets a lot of sun over here. This is my neighbor's driveway, and the sun really shines brightly here. Oh, look, my co-star. Hello, honey. This is Buttercup. Hi, buddy. And then this is getting a little bit bigger bush than I thought it would, and it's sort of, melding into the wax myrtle, so that's fine with me. But I think it's a really pretty little plant. Now, I haven't had it that long. I don't know whether it's gonna freeze to the ground or if it's evergreen. I'm not sure. And then down here you can see my peppers. I have neglected to come pick them. And look how pretty. I still got peppers. And these have been producing just, oh my goodness, for 6 months probably. And I love that. Oh my gosh, look at this. These are all, these are jalapenos that I've left on so long that they've turned red. All right, come on, buddy. This is a Jane Magnolia. I've got a couple of them, and they lost their leaves pretty early in the fall, and they look pretty terrible. They put on their fuzzy little buds immediately after flowering in the spring, and this has dropped most of its buds, and the ones on that tree are really, really small and underdeveloped. And I'm not sure what's happened. If anybody has any ideas, grows these, but this should be 3 inches long. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. This is a fragrant mist flower back there. Look how sweet that is. And this has been it's a real favorite of butterflies, particularly queen and monarch butterflies. And it's gotten kind of big and gangly, but I really like it there. It seems really happy. And then, my goodness, December was amazing for my roses. And let's see if we can, a little bee. This is Mutabilis. Look how pretty. And it's getting ready to go crazy. I'm not sure what'll happen. The freeze is only supposed to be about 30 degrees. And in my yard, it might not even hit 30 degrees. We're in the middle of Houston. And so it may be that more North Houston will hit that. Mutabilis is so neat. It starts out with a dark coral bud. It flowers into a peachy pink. And as it ages on the bush, it turns a really dark pink. And they're all on the same bush, and it can get sort of almost yellow. Look at these little guys. And I think they named it really well, Mutabilis. If you think about the Latin root for mutate, right? And so it does mutate during its little season from one day to another. My Cape Plumbago has got a few little dregs of flowers on there. And then this is my desert willow, which I've been watching. Y'all have been watching with me. It's got 5 leaves left. I'm not sure. It lost its leaves over time. I'm hoping that just means it's losing them for the winter and it'll come back. I think some of this is dead, but the rest of it I think is okay. I'm hoping anyway. I've got this wonderful penta, still blooming beautifully. This has lasted several years for me. Think if it got down to, in the teens, I think this, would not be perennial. It's sort of a tender perennial. But for me, it's been just fine for several years now. And then I've got a Mystic Spires salvia. Now this will get knocked down by the freeze. So pretty, lots of new growth. When it was 85 degrees last week, and sometimes the garden just thinks it's spring, and so I get lots of new growth. and it'll get knocked down, but it will be fine. That's why I grow perennials. They will freeze to the ground and come right back when it warms up. And then in the back, I've got a wood fern back there and a oak leaf hydrangea, and they will, in a hard freeze, I think they'll both, die to the ground, or lose their leaves and die to the ground. But I think with a light frost, I think they'll be all right. I'm not too worried about them. And my loosestrife, this is a little native Texas plant, had little tiny flowers all during the year, and it's looking kind of scruffy, and I'm not sure. I haven't had it long enough to know, like, do I cut it down? We'll see what happens, whether it'll die to the ground in a freeze. And then this is porterweed. It's looking, long in the tooth here, but I'm not pruning. And in a hard freeze, this will die to the ground. And the dregs of some zinnias are still hanging on, and some coral nymph salvia-ish. It's a hybrid, I think. So salvia coccinea, some kind of variety of salvia coccinea, and I think that should probably be fine in a 30-degree freeze. But things like this are much more tender. This is just a spicy globe basil, which is still blooming, but that'll die to the ground. I think, in maybe at 30 degrees, that might actually die to the ground. And then this, oh my goodness, y'all, the dwarf Barbados cherry. You see all the cherries on it? Isn't that just the most fun? And this is not evergreen, but I bet at 30 degrees it probably is. I'm just not that worried about it. They're very tender things, will get knocked down to the ground at 30 degrees, but a lot of these perennials, they might get a little burn on them, but they'll be fine. And then this is a pretty pink muley grass. It's not looking very pink, but and then let's see, this is a coneflower. It's not much left of that, is there? And then one thing I know about this this dwarf Barbados cherry, and there's a little look at a flower, is that it will root itself, right? So this is just a low branch, but if I leave it, that will take root, and can take over. So I do keep it trimmed back. Now this is Salvia leucantha. Will be fine in a freeze. It's a perennial, but this little sort of newish growth, I cut it back a couple months ago, so it has some nice new tender growth, but that will probably get hit with the freeze. And then I've still got some pretty powwow wild berry, and they're perennial. They've lasted several years. I don't know it in 30 degrees. I'm not sure whether those would just still be green at the end of 30-degree freeze. And the same here. And I'm not going to protect any of these things. These are perennials, and anything that's an annual is fine. It'll come back up from seed, or I'll put some new out here. But mostly this is perennials. Here's a little bit still blooming, not much. This is Salvia farinacea. Little native salvia, so pretty. And that should, I think that's pretty tender, so that may die to the ground. And then one of the things, here's yarrow. Look how pretty yarrow looks when it's cooler outside. Love it. Such pretty foliage. And then I've got lots of little seedlings coming up, and they'll pretty much be fine. I could throw a little bit of dry leaves over these, but you start to over time learn what the seedlings look like. That's a little larkspur right there. And then this is easy to identify. This is a Texas rock rose, and it drops some seeds. And so I've got some little babies, and I could pull those out and move them or share them if I've got too many here. And then the giant chicken, there is a very decades long running chicken joke between my husband and his best friend, and so we were the recipient of the plastic chicken who was brought to us on Christmas. I'll show you a couple of things on the walkway. This is Greg's mist flower, and it is still looking so pretty and really, really blooming well. Look how much of that. And that, again, that's beloved by butterflies. Now, this gomphrena, which looks amazing, is finally starting to turn over a little bit, go to seed a little bit. But I do think that this is really an annual. I have had it, gomphrena, be perennial in my garden, but not this variety. And I really protected it, and that's why it stayed through the year. I'm guessing if it's 33 out here, that might die down, which would be a bummer, but I'm not gonna come cover it. I'm sort of, when it's the middle of January, like I'm ready, I want my garden to have a rest. And so, you know, if it's the end of November, I'm gonna come with a frost cloth and cover this whole thing, right? So that things don't die down. So it's not just ugly for the whole winter. But, you know, we're a week, 2 weeks maybe from, you know, sort of mid-January, and I am willing for all of this to get knocked to the ground. I'll cut it back in the middle of February, and we'll start again in the spring. Just wanted to show you my front door. Turned out so cute with my little wreath up there. I was really happy with my little Christmas business there. Turned out super cute. There's my little helpful boy. Hi, buddy. You're gonna be cute. Come be cute. Hi. Hi, buddy. Hi. Hi there. And this is my mystery salvia. This was here when we moved in. It's sort of gangly and goofy, and I have been unable to really identify what it is, but it has been here for 15, 16 years. And of course, because it thinks it's spring already, it has already got all this new growth. But this is the toughest plant. It just dies to the ground and just never bothers. I never bothered to cover it. I know, hello, you're so helpful. And then all this, it's so pretty. It's little jewels of opar. I love the little seed heads. I just love it. And the roses, again, this winter has been amazing for the roses. Now, we'll see. This shrimp plant, which is so amazing, is pretty tender. And so at 30, the tips might get knocked off, probably deep in there. It's not, the leaves will still be green. But if it hits, 28, that's gonna come to the ground. And this pink fire spike back here, I swear, every year it blooms like the week before it freezes for the first time. So it's never blooming and beautiful. And then you can see my passion vine has been completely munched down. I had really more caterpillars. This is a Gulf fritillary caterpillar. And they really munched down. I had more caterpillars than I had plants. So you can see he is now eating the outer edge, the green edge. You can see this part is just stripped back. So he's eating any fleshy green that's left. And I've got a lot of these caterpillars. And I keep telling them, dudes, you're gonna make yourself a chrysalis by tomorrow. Last year I had a lot of caterpillars out here for our first freeze, and they all got killed back. So, circle of life, people. Hello, I know you're so helpful. You're so cute, y'all. He's just following me around being so cute. I can't stop. I can't stop the petting. Come on, let's go. Oops, come on. Now, of course, again, because it thinks it's spring here, these incredible kalanchos. Look, I've got flower heads on all of them. This whole thing is getting ready to be covered with flowers. So I will protect this stuff. I have a frost cloth, and I will protect that. If it gets really cold, this will actually, if it gets too cold in the 20s, I have to take that in the house, or it will die out here, even in the garage. It is very tender. But at 30, I could cover it and I think it'll be just fine. And that's true for all of these little succulents here. And the pansies, I'm sure you guys know, they won't freeze. You can have a pansy, you know, that'll be blooming in the snow. So I'm not worried about those. Now I will take another frost cloth and cover this. Little seedlings I will cover, and also these kalanchos are getting ready to bloom, which they're so beautiful, but it would be great if they would do this in like February 28th. So I will cover these plants. Look how beautiful this aloe vera, so pretty, you guys. I love it. Now, one of the things I'll do out here, a lot of this, if it's really cold, it will die down. A lot of it will just sort of get nipped if it's not that cold. I'm not going to cover really anything out here. But I tell you what I will do. I've got a couple of things that are annuals that have come up from seed that I want to save for next year. Also, as a side note, look at this. This is a purple coneflower that is like, I don't know, 3 feet tall and has giant. I might put something around that just because it's so wackadoo that it's the 1st of January and all of a sudden it has decided that it's going to be, spectacular. But one of the things I did was I threw out cleome seeds. I do that all year long. Just when the seed pods pop, I sprinkle them. And I have some cleomes that have gotten kind of big. And so I will put, just to save a couple, the rest of them will die down in a freeze, and that's fine. I don't need 5 million of them. And so I will put a bucket over, a couple, just strategically where I want them, and save a couple for the spring. But I won't do that for all of them. And then another thing, I've got some leaves. Now, I asked my children, I said, hey, my entire family, I announced, if you want a free thing to give me for Christmas, drive down the street and grab me a couple of bags of dry leaves. 0 people did that. Not a one. None of my family. Even when given directions to which neighbors had dry leaves in bags. And so my yard guy brought me some. And so I was like, there isn't anything to do in the yard. I don't need any help in the yard. Will you bring me leaves? And he brought me like 20 bags of leaves. So I have tons and tons of little seedlings. And I've got, this is a Minoan lace. It's like a tiny little bishop's weed or Queen Anne's lace, but it gets about 1 foot tall. That's what that is. This is a little fennel seed. I think that's a larkspur seedling. And so, and there's tons of little seedlings. And a lot of these, like the fennel would probably be fine. Really, all these seedlings are probably fine. But if I'm worried about anything, I can take just a few leaves and just sprinkle and just protect them a little bit. And then when the freeze is over, I can just pull them very gently off to the side. And then I will just leave the leaves, anything I plop in here. So if I want to protect some things, I can do that with some dry leaves when it's just being 30 degrees. If it was going to be really cold and I really wanted to protect things, I can put leaves around the base of some plants. And if it's going to be really, really cold, if I want to cover something with leaves, I really want it to not die down. Or if it's a tender perennial I want to try to keep, I will cover the base of it with leaves, and then we put a frost cloth over that. And that does an amazing job of keeping things. I can't even explain to you how helpful that is to have just a bucket of leaves on one plant and a frost cloth over it. That'll save stuff in a 10-degree weather. Okay, this is that little native salvia that I've lost the tag. I found the tag, lost the tag again, y'all. Someday I will find it again and write it down somewhere I can find it. It's gotten so goofy, but it's really pretty. And I love that electric blue. this elephant ear, that'll get knocked down very easily. 30 degrees, it could go either way. It could look pitiful, or it could just be a few little burns on the leaves. Most likely, if it gets really cold, any of these new leaves, of course, it also thinks it's spring. These new leaves will get knocked down. They're too tender. But the whole thing will last through the year. It's been perennial for me in Houston. This is the black and blue salvia. And then all of this, it's sort of laying down. I kind of think a raccoon walked across it, or a possum, to get to the pond. But these are daylilies, and they'll die to the ground. Maybe not at 30 degrees, but a little colder, and they would. Here is one of the things, my little rosebush, which looked so terrible 2 weeks ago. Now, I have not fertilized this in probably 6 or 8 weeks now. It has put on all this new little tender baby growth, and even a tiny little bud there. And because it just was bare a couple weeks ago. So now it thinks it's the spring. All of this at 30, it's so tender and so new, that will probably get killed off. And so, we'll have to wait a little while for it to come back out. This, I'm kind of bummed. Look how incredible this is. This Mexican hat. I mean, you guys, it must be at least 3 feet across, all the way across. And I'm kind of bummed. It's still blooming, which I love. But it also thinks it's spring. Look at the tiny buds, just the whole top. And these will not, at 30, that'll probably get nipped back. The plant will be fine. It's perennial. But those tender new will probably not make it through the freeze. And then tons of just little stuff. And again, I've hit a point where I'm trying not to walk back in there, because I've got little seedlings. And then look at this, Souvenir de St. Anne. Incredible. Oh, look at this. Look at this little clump of it. Oh my goodness, right? January, Houston. Love it. And cute little 290 pink buttons. So little. Now I pulled out, this was covered with purple hyacinth bean vine, and that one, like this back here, same thing. It looks fine. This one just looked awful, and so I went ahead and pulled it out. I try to leave everything for all the creatures that will overwinter. They need shelter too, and so I try not to pull any of this out until it really warms up in February. But this was it looked so awful, and I just sort of had it. So I went ahead and pulled that out, and it just helped the space a little bit to have that. And then, oh my gosh, look at this huge cleome. But there's no way, it's too big. I can't protect that unless I had my own frost cloth and wrap the whole, so that'll go. I'm not sure it will make it to 30 degrees. I don't remember what a cleome will do. Now here's a little lesson. Sometimes, even if you think you killed a plant because you didn't pay attention to it, you bought it. Let's say this happened to someone we know. You bought a plant, you had it on the driveway and ignored it for a couple of weeks, and it died. And two like it didn't die. And you were going to go plant the two, and you thought, well, I have this little pot, and it's a native plant, and I'm just going to plant the root ball. And it came up. Look at that. So don't give up hope. Sometimes you can undo your neglect by going ahead and planting the root ball. And then here's why I'm trying not to walk back here very much, is like you can already see that is Amy coming up, which will be so beautiful. I'm really excited. I love Amy. I did leave one little scrap of hyacinth bean vine. This will get hit to the ground. It will not make it through. It might make it through 30 degrees, but I don't think so. Now, this is an oak tree. I don't know what kind of oak tree this is. I'm sure one of you guys has that kind of knowledge to know by just looking at it what kind of oak tree that is. Hi, buddy. Hi. And maybe you can pop in the comments if you know. But so, we think about our gardens long term, and I know that when my husband retires, in 6.5 years, we will leave this house. We won't live here anymore, and our plan is to move to Colorado, and I have to assume that whoever buys this wonderful house that we love so much, I have to assume that they will not be gardeners like I'm a gardener, and they'll probably tear this out. I've torn out other people's gardens because I tore the garden that was out here. It wasn't like this, but I tore out a lot of plants that I just didn't like. And so I have to assume that this garden, has 6 years on it, and then it will probably get torn out. And so I think about, this is it's a water oak, and it's already a little bit scruffy. They live about 40 years, and this one is already probably 20 years old. It's probably 30 years old, because it was big when we moved here in '09. So I have to assume that oak will go in the next 20 years, right? And so I would love to leave the legacy of an oak tree. And this is the perfect way. This just popped up. It was something the squirrels planted, and this one is in the middle of the garden, right? So I am sort of dead center in the garden, right? And so, and all the power lines are way out here. And so if I plant or leave this oak tree and let it grow, in the next 6.5 years, it's not going to get that big. I don't think it would bother and give me any kind of shade I couldn't deal with out here. But in 6.5 years, it might have a head start. It might be 4 or 5 feet tall. I don't really know. But it might be something that future owners of this house would say, oh, well, I don't want this big garden. I'm not going to take care of that, but we'd love to have an oak tree in the middle of the yard. And this one's established and growing. And so, I'm thinking about just leaving it. Tell me what you think. Am I crazy? How big would an oak tree get in 6 years? I don't know. So anyway, it's just, those are things I'm thinking about. I already have I don't even know. I know what town I'm going to move to 6 years from now. I already have garden plants in my head for that. Like, this is what the front will look like there. So I'm a little crazy. Okay, so let me show you. I've still got this really pretty, this was a volunteer purple coneflower, and I tend to, to deadhead and to scatter the seeds, but I know that birds will eat those seeds, and so I've tried to be a good winter gardener and leave those on the stem for somebody to eat if they want as a bird food. Now, I planted some carrots last week, a couple days ago really, and if you're wondering what I did with this, I made a whole little video. It's like 3 minutes long, a whole video about how I plant carrots in the fall. This isn't the fall. I waited too long, but I plant them in the fall and have for beautiful flowers in the spring. And so what I forgot to say on that little video is it really, in Houston, it'd be better to do this. I usually do it in late October, early November. Last year when I broke my leg, we didn't do it until December. This year, life went a little crazy and got in the way. And I didn't do it until I think it was literally like the 1st of January. It'll be fine. Here's why I do it. Carrots are a cold water, cool weather plant. I don't have the time or energy to go planting carrot seeds and potting them up okay. So I'm buying a carrot because I don't have that time and energy to start it from seed. But also, I'm planting it in the fall instead of the spring, because by the time this gets big enough, it'll get 4 feet tall. By the time it gets big enough to bloom and be beautiful, it's starting to get hot and it'll keel over. But if I plant it in the fall, it is established so that as soon as it warms up, bang, it starts growing and I can get a beautiful flower for a couple of months before the summer sets in. So that's why I'm planting it in the fall, is to get it established through the cool weather so that it is going. There's Miss Doubtfire. Hello, Mrs. Hello, baby. I have to make sure old Buttercup doesn't see her. He's been chasing her today. Now here's one of the things I was talking about earlier. So this is this is more of the big penta, and look at that cool blue fly in there. And this is, it's a tender perennial, and so in Houston, and so hello pumpkin, say hello to your friends. Hey, hello. What a sweet baby. This is something that during an enormous, very hard freeze, I put tons of leaves around the base. I actually even think I cut it all off, jammed just buckets of leaves around the bottom to protect the roots and the very bottom of the plant. And I covered it with a frost cloth. It was fine. So that was amazing. And then here's little diamond frost euphorbia. Isn't it beautiful? I love it. The salvia madrensis, which is so beautiful, this yellow. This is my first year with it, and so I assume it will die to the ground. It really has not quite gone to seed quite yet. I see one little seed pod that's opened, so I was hoping to get some seeds from that for somebody, one of you guys actually. So I'm gonna have to. I don't know how that's gonna go. And there's a little more coming up there, isn't it? But I think this is pretty tender. I think that'll die to the ground. Maybe in 30 degrees, maybe not. And again, here's another oak tree. And I kind of thought about this one, leaving that one. But it may be too close. There are the power lines there. So if this is going to be a huge oak tree, maybe I shouldn't leave that one. Look at this beautiful ocean of Amistad salvia. Isn't it just gorgeous? This is the kind of thing that bums me out. Like, okay, I've gotten months and months and months out of this plant, but it's so beautiful. It's gonna bum me out. This is pretty tender, and at 30, it might look pretty bad. And the same with this salvia madrensis probably. And that would be a bummer. But I don't want it to die back in 1st of December. So that's too long to have just the yard look terrible. But I don't mind it if it's, middle of January, that's fine with me. This, look at this bog sage. Salvia uliginosa. So pretty. Oh, I love it. I love this blue. This has been here forever and ever. It is fairly tender, and that might die back in 30 degrees. I'll tell you what will almost definitely keel over is this. This is fire spike, and I've got a pink one. I didn't realize I planted a pink one back here 100 years ago, and I thought it had died. And then this year I thought, why is this one taller than all the rest? This is the pink one. So you can see it's got tons of buds. It hasn't actually really bloomed more than those 2 flowers. It's a 3rd flower down there. Pitiful. These bloom months before the pink. Pink is taller, later bloom. I think it's a prettier plant, prettier flower anyway. I like the pink better, but yeah, it's a tropical plant and it'll probably do much better, way further south where it's not going to freeze at all. I'm sure it's gorgeous all year long, but it has been very, very hardy in Houston. It will get knocked back by a freeze pretty easily, but it's come back for years. And my little leaning Tower of Pisa, little olive tree it's doing all right, but I need to figure out how to stand it up. Okay, so here's my leaf pile. God bless Hector, my sweet leaf guy, my sweet yard guy. He brought me 1,000,000 bags of leaves. And here's my compost back here, and I take you back here because it was so fun earlier today. I just heard this racket, this really loud chirping, and I thought, well, it's not a squirrel. Like, what could it be? And I was able to sneak up, and sitting right here was a Carolina wren and I'm sure they pick through, and they're looking for bugs, and they're looking for maybe a worm or two in the compost. But oh my gosh, what a racket. And it was super fun. I was able to sneak all the way back here and peek at him before, and I didn't disturb him. I walked away, but that was really fun. The crepe myrtle's looking, the wax myrtle's looking really great. And all of this, a lot of this, these are 4 o'clocks down here. I don't think I have any blooming I can show you. These are 4 o'clocks, and they've been wonderful, and they just self-seed every year. Once you have 4 o'clocks, you will always have 4 o'clocks. And again, here's a oak leaf hydrangea, which has got such beautiful color for the fall. And at 30 degrees tomorrow, I'm not sure whether it will drop those leaves, or it needs to be colder for that to drop its leaves. I will, because it's so goofy looking. I am planning on trimming this. This blooms on new growth, so I'm not afraid to trim it. I'm not sure exactly when. Maybe with everything else, the last frost date here is the 15th of February. And I may trim that on the 15th of February and see. Now, I will take a frost cloth. I am going to cover, because it's not going to be that cold, I'm just going to cover these flower pots. And I'm going to show you, 10 years ago, I didn't even know what a frost cloth was. I had never heard of such a thing. This one says plant cover, but they're also called frost cloths. And I get the little bit heavier one. I think the number here, the ounces per square yard, is really the thickness of it. And I get the biggest one they have, 10 by 33 feet. That is a whopping big frost cloth. This is what it looks like. This is from last year. It's about as thick as a paper towel, like a really nice paper towel, but not so thick you can't see my hand through it. It's very tough, right? I'm trying to tear that and I can't do it. And we just unfold it, and what we'll do, we usually, if it was December, if it was the 1st of December and it was going to go to 25 degrees, I would cover this whole garden. That's why I get such big ones. I would cover this whole garden, and we use like sort of tent stakes and things or yard staples. I've heard something used, a term like that, a yard staple, to hold them down over it. And if it's going to be in the teens, that's when I'm going to take all of those leaves. I'm going to cover the tuck it into the bottoms of these plants that are tender perennials. And then I'm going to cover the whole thing with frost cloth. And that's not what I'm going to do this week. I will just take the frost cloth and just cover these, and I'll probably use the flower pots to hold it. I'll just tuck it under flower pots. This beautiful pipe vine, last year before, I forgot to cover it, and it was fine. I mean, like hard freeze. I don't think even it died down. And so I'm not going to bother with these. I'll just leave that as is. But I will cover my little begonias. Now, they wouldn't be fine if it was going to be 27. I would take those in the garage. But I'm just going to cover this with a giant frost cloth. I might move some of the plant pots closer to each other. And I'll do that for the perennials, the succulent theater as well. And look how funny, I'm just noticing how orange and weird the leaves went on this begonia. That is weird. Some little irises popping up, thinking it's the spring. And this beautiful shrimp plant. I've got some this is Gulf Coast penstemon here. My other penstemon in the back was really taken over by that bog sage, and I didn't clip it back in time. And so I think it's probably gotten killed just from neglect. And then this is inland sea oats, and I thought I would just show you the seed head. Oh, this one's pretty ratty, but look how pretty. Isn't that neat? And that's something, when it's not this ratty, you can trim and put inside. And I should be trimming back because it will spread very easily, too easily really, for my taste. But it's a grass that grows in the shade. This is Mrs. B.R. Cant. And these roses, at 30 degrees, not really, they'll probably still be blooming. I have pictures of roses covered in snow, you know, from 10 years ago. And so I'm not that, you know, I think those will still be pretty and going in this very light freeze. Here's some new plants I put in, and this I might throw some leaves on these only because I just planted them a month ago. And so this is Salvia farinaceae, and then this is a little Blackfoot daisy. I called it Copper Canyon daisy on my last video. This is a Blackfoot daisy, and there's another little seedling that I recognize that seedling. So I might cover that, but I might just around the bottom, just some handfuls of leaves, only because they're really new in the ground. And then look how pretty that porterweed, I think, is prettier than the one in the front right now. And my crazy big lily. Oh, now here's the last of Mrs. B.R. Cant. Oh my goodness, y'all. Isn't it amazing? Now, a couple of weeks ago, I probably had 100 flowers on here. You can see all the spent flowers, but also there's a whole new set of buds coming up. And if they're super new, they might get knocked back, but they might still bloom. And then this is this wonderful little, it's just looking so pretty. This is fleece flower, and look how pretty. And I cut this back pretty hard in the summer, and because it was just ratty and looking messy, and it did really well. And then here, this is my Coreopsis. What is this called? Which Coreopsis is this? I can't remember. Anyway, it's looking really pretty. These leaves are awfully tender looking, and so I wonder if they'll get knocked back by the freeze. But even something as little as this kind of protection up here and this kind of protection down here, that might be enough of a microclimate to keep this from going below 32. So there are things, you know, microclimates even in your own yard, and there are, you know, I know my yard is not going to get as cold as it is, you know, 2 miles north. And so I've learned that when they say it's going to be 30, maybe in my yard it'll be 30, but that's unlikely. Here's this sweet, gosh, what's this called? I'll think of it in a minute. Look at these. Oh my gosh. Okay, I really hadn't been back here. This is Martha Gonzalez. This is the best this bush has ever looked in the history of this bush. Look how pretty. Isn't that pretty? And this bush is probably 20 years old. I brought it from my own garden, where I left just dirt and devastation because I took every single plant from my garden and brought it here when we moved. Here's some arrowwood viburnum that it will lose its leaves. I'm not sure. It's deciduous, but it's a pretty tough looking, these are thick leaves, and I think that might be just fine in a 30-degree freeze. And then this wonderful native Texas honeysuckle. And then I'm gonna kind of end back here with this coral berry that actually has berries on it, and I'm hoping maybe that little tiny bird that was chirping at everybody will find something like that in the yard and have a snack. This chicken part of the same nonsense the chicken out front was, but that chicken's like 10 years old. But the same nonsense from the same friendship. Well, thanks for walking around with me. Thank you for all your sweet comments. It took me forever to reply, but I did finally reply to comments the other day, and I want to say thank you for all your kind words. I thought I was going to end on that, but I won't. I wanted to show you, this is my little succulent theater, which I will just cover with a frost cloth. And then these all in here, this is a Texas bluebonnet. And they have gotten, you know, you're supposed to plant them in the fall. And I swear this one's getting ready to bloom. This is nuts. They think it's spring already. Look how tall. I think that, I mean, y'all, that's a foot tall. But they'll be fine. They're made for this. They're made for this. And even if it was going to be 20 degrees, I still wouldn't cover them. You could, if you wanted a little bit more greenery to show, I could throw leaves on here or something. But in a 30 degree freeze, I won't even think about it. All right, kids, I really will say goodbye now. Thank you so much. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I wish you a Happy New Year. Bye-bye.